Hello everybody and welcome to Skip Allen Paints and the YouTube channel of Skip Allen. This is video 2 in a series of videos about my new thick paint brushes. Okay, so in the last video we used the paper script to create a layer that mimicked the paper. And I want to do that again. I'm going to go up here and get my paint bucket tool. And this time I'm going to work much darker than I did before. So we're going to grab a kind of a dark, let's go this dark, a dark brown, and add that. And then we're going to click on the paper overlay. And the process will make it a little bit lighter than it was. Now one of the reasons it's lighter is that it's 80% of what it of opacity. It's also a gel layer looking at a white canvas layer. The reason it's a gel layer is if I were working with watercolor, I would work under the paper. But I'm going to be working with thick oil, so I want to work over the top of the paper, and I can take the opacity back up to 100. And I'm going to lock that layer so that I don't wind up painting on it. Okay, so let's start looking at the brushes. I can hide the layers panel now. Now, I'm going to do these in a certain order, which is not the order that they're probably going to be displayed in the brush category. This is the order of, it's kind of like building from one brush to the next. You'll see when we get into it. So I'm going to open up the first brush, which is called Thin Wet Paint Bristle. Now, it doesn't have a lot of grain to it. It has some. If I paint lightly, let's get a different color. Let's go with a lighter kind of gray. So if I paint lightly with it, and I need it to be a little bit lighter than that, I think. Let's go this way. Yeah, there we go. Now, if I paint lightly with it, you can see that it does give you some grain. But if you paint heavier, now that dark color that was in there was a little bit of that first paint stroke that I had. But if you paint with a stronger stroke, you can see that you've got a little buildup of paint and you have the bristle marks, and that's what paint would do if you have a somewhat stiff brush. Okay, now let's go to the next one because it's also thin, wet. It is a flat brush and it is grainy. All right, so if we pick another color, let's go with this kind of blue. Because it's a flat brush, now all of these brushes are made to work with an art pen so that you can use barrel rotation. If you don't have an art pen, they still will work, but you won't be able to do the barrel rotation. And in my opinion, an art pen makes everything work a lot better. Okay, so a flat brush, I can paint, toward the flat end. And you see this is much more bristly and has more texture or grain than the other brush. You can also, though, brush linear, along the edge. And that can give you a little bit heavier paint as well. See? Now, blending, this brush blends some, but not a huge amount. And what you want to look at is right up here in the property bar, your bleed slider is right there. If the bleed slider is up near 100, it's going to blend more than if the bleed slider is down near 10%. And you can see this is blending, and it's also putting texture over this the previous marks here. So both of these brushes are wet. I think of them as the first brush to go to sort of start putting paint on a canvas. And they're not real thick either. They do have some thickness to them, but not a huge amount. All right, we go to the next one, which is still thin paint stiff bristle. Now, this thin paint stiff bristle is like the first one, but you see, you can see the bristle a lot more, and it's a lot thicker than the other. Now, sometimes I think this is too much, but other times I think it's fine. It's like a trade-off. There are certain times when you want to paint with a brush that you want to see it paint with a lot of thickness. And this can give you this nice kind of blending strokes like this. Very bristly, and it is also grainy. I'm sorry, I take that back. Very bristly, not as grainy. So it's very much like the first brush, thin, wet paint, but it's more bristly because it has a stiff brush to it. Okay, let's see. We're at 6 minutes. I think we're going to stop the video and go to the next video. That way you won't have to spend so much time on each video. Okay, talk to you in the next video. Bye-bye.